Yes. Welcome to the panel on rethinking parenthood and parent. Welcome to the panel on rethinking parenting and parenthood in 21st century Africa. Now, this panel is in 3 parts. Today is the first part of the panel. The second and third parts will hold on Saturday. Now, notions and normative ideas about parenting and parenthood is constantly shifting. With technology and globalization, the responsibility of parenting and parenthood has broadened so much that a lot has to be negotiated in the acts of parenting. So this panel and the subsequent panel would address the dynamic nature of parenting and parenthood in the 21st century panel. Today's panel is made up of 4 panelists. Are the others around? Okay, I can see one of them. So 4 panelists will be presenting today, and we'll listen to them accordingly. So with me here, I have Kabiru Babatunde. I also have Dr. B.A. Taiwo. Yeah, Dr. Bukola Taiwo, like I call her. And I think with us online is, yeah. Sorry about that. Okay, yes. With us online is Taibat Adedamola. Okay, and then there's also Amos Taiwo. So I hope he or she will join us later. You here? Could you please join us here? That's possible here. I don't know if you love me. No, you don't need to log in. So when it's your time, camera will focus on you. Yes. Okay, no problem. So thank you. Now our first panelist is Kabiru Babatunde Amusa. Kabiru Babatunde Amusa recently finished his second Masters of Arts in African Sustainable Communities Department of the Ben Gurion University of Negev, Israel. Okay, he had his first Masters of Arts in History at the University of Ibadan. He was an assistant lecturer at the Osun State College of Education, Ilara Orogun, between 2017 and 2019. He is a recipient of the History Global Lab and History Dialogue Program Fund in 2020 and 2021, organized by the Princeton Institute of International and Regional Studies. He is a beneficiary of the Tamagulan African Studies Research Fund and the Ben Gurion University Department of History Research Fund. He is a junior fellow of the Institute, that's IFRA, just call it IFRA, a member of the Lagos Studies Association, LSA, West African Research and Innovation Management Association, Global History Lab, History Dialogue Program, and the Students Historical Society of Nigeria. He is fascinated with cultural and environmental history. Thank you very much for being here with us today. You have the floor.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'll be presenting on sarcasm and facial expression and context of expressive parenting among the Yorubas. And so basically what this research is all about is to debunk the conventional notion of parenting in terms of the psychological aspects of what scholars thought about parenting. And this is a way of stylishly debunking the effects of colonialism, religion, Western education, as well as other form of transformative mechanisms that have altered the socio-cultural form of parenting among the Yorubas. So, in the process, this research is to focus on the colonial concept of modernity and how it altered the socio-cultural practices on parenthood. So, parenting is actually structured majorly in 4 ways, which is the authoritative, authoritarian, neglect, and permissive. Yeah. So these are the theories that have been used in the past to categorize the style of parenting. And so this, if you look at the way these concepts are being emphasized, it's actually for someone who understands the tenets of the African tradition of childbearing, would see that none of this theory of parenting is actually addressing the real concept of parenting among the traditional Yoruba people. And so this is why I think I need to put up the idea of another concept of what parenting is, especially among the Yorubas. And so, because of our time, I won't want to go deep into those concepts of the authoritarian, like just the conventional part of parenting. So I'll just go straight to the concept of parenting among the Yorubas. Yeah, I emphasize on 3 concepts. The first one is the communal aspect of parenting, of parenthood. And this is because among the Yorubas, there is a popular adage that says that Igba ojú kò tó ọmọ wò, ojú kan ló ń bí ọmọ, Igba ojú kò tó ọmọ wò, which means that a child is they give birth to a child, a single person gives birth to a child, but it is not enough for about 200 eyes to watch over that child. What do they mean? They mean that the acts of every child needs to be monitored by everybody who is considered to be a responsible elder in that community. And so, in the process of trying to put the child in the right space in the society, various acts are being used to put that child on his toes. And one of them is what I refer to as facial expression, body language, signs, and symbols. And the last one is the language arts. The language arts is where the aspect of the sarcasm, the metaphoric aspect, and all comes to play, as I explained further. So, the communal parenting comes with both, it can be verbal or non-verbal, just like I pointed out initially. So, for the expressive parenting, it is mostly non-verbal because it has to do with attitude and actions that does not necessarily translate to vocal expression. So, but in terms of the language arts, this is strictly on vocal expression, and it is a kind of, it entails proverb, it entails myths, it entails metaphoric expressions as well as sarcasm. So the research actually questioned a lot how civilization has actually altered child upbringing among the Yorubas. And so, what do I mean by this facial expression? There was an argument some times ago that actually prompted this research. And that was because the question of why children nowadays find it difficult to understand face contact or sign language. And so in the process of the discussion, there was an argument that it was as a result of the colonial law or colonial policy on child upbringing. And so that parents tried to avoid the physical contacts that could make them become victims of those colonial policies. And because of that, they tend to make use of sign language a lot to correct their child, especially publicly. Although this research is still subject to a lot of criticism and as well as field work and especially oral interviews to actually find out if that was true or not. But then there is this part of the research that actually talks about the verbal aspects, which is not necessarily an insult, but it is put in a very polite way, which entails a very big personal indemnity. Is a huge insult, even though the person is not insulting you. But whenever such words are being uttered, it is a very demoralizing statement. And so there are questions on why are these words embedded in such words of parenthood among the Yorubas. And so those are some of the findings that this research is actually going to look into. So your view are very, very much relevant in this discussion because it is primarily a way of readdressing how civilization, colonialism, education, and religion has actually represented itself among parenthood. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kabiru. Now, if you have questions, I'll suggest that you take notes of them, and by the time all the panelists present their presentation, we'll take the questions. Next, we'll listen to the presentation of Dr. Akinade Edith Abidemi and Dr. Saibat Adidamola Jukobola. Dr. Akinade Edith Abidemi is
yes.
Okay. Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Please, before you proceed, I want to read your bio.
Okay, please, can I share my slide?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
Okay.
All right. Dr. Akinade Faith Abidemi is of the Department of Education Management from Lead City University, Ibadan, Oyo State, Nigeria. She's a specialist in the area of educational planning and policy. She has contributed articles in reputable outlets that include local, national, and foreign journals, as well as book chapters. She's active in teaching relating to institutional development in the fourth industrial revolution. She has participated in national and international conferences and workshops. She is also a bona fide member of learned associations, both local and international. Jukobola Saibat Adidamola is of the Department of Educational Management, Solarin University of Education, Ogun State, Nigeria. Her research interest areas are economics of education, gender studies, planning and policy, and educational administration. She has numerous publications in learned journals, both local and international outlets, and also a registered member of recognized association. You have the floor, and you have 15 minutes for your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Akinade will join us soon. He will join us any moment from now. So I'm Jukobola Saibat Adidamola, and I'll be presenting on the topic. I'm sorry.
We can hear you and we can see you.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Well, I don't think you've started sharing your screen.
Yes, I couldn't share it. I don't know what happened. Saying the file is not supported or something like that.
And you can only share using PowerPoint. Did you make slides?
Yes, I made
think
it on PowerPoint. It's on PowerPoint.
Okay, you can present without the...
Okay. Yes, the title is Single Parenting and Child Upbringing in Modern Nigeria. Single parenting has become a prevalent phenomenon in modern Nigerian society, with an increased number of individuals raising children without the presence of a partner or a spouse. This shift in family dynamics has significant implications for child upbringing and poses unique challenges for single parents. The conceptual framework of this this research work, we have the family, we have single parenting, and we have the child development upbringing. We all know what family is as a group of people related by blood, and it could be by adoption or by birth. So to not waste much of our time, let's dwell into the topic proper, where we have the demographic trends of single parenting in Nigeria and the factors that are contributing to its rise. One of it is increase in divorce rates. You all agree with me that single parenting has becoming a norms in the Nigerian society, not only in Nigerian society, but in the world at large, where they feel a single parent can also bring up a child. One of it is an increase in divorce rates. Despite the marriages that are going on every day, we see that divorce rate is also increasing tremendously, where we have a single father or single mother nurturing their children. Also, we have separation and marital instability, where the divorce could be legally, and some, they will just separate. Let's just have a break. You go your separate ways, let me go my separate ways. Sometimes they even share the children among themselves. While sometimes a party might take all the children with him. So this has been on a rise or on an increase on daily basis in Nigeria and in the world at large. Also, high maternal mortality is also a very vital factor that has led to single parenting, where we have the death of the mother, maybe while during pregnancy or while giving birth. Though medically, are you with me, please?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. So this high maternal mortality has also been a factor where the father will end up being the one taking care of the children, bringing them up himself. Another factor is unplanned pregnancies. This has been on a high level where we have even teenagers. I happen to teach in secondary schools. You need to see during the COVID-19 break, by the time we resume back in school, almost all these teenage girl child are pregnant. In fact, it was really terrifying. Not only that, could you believe this SSC WAEC examination they are doing now? At least we don't have less than 6 female child that are pregnant. And when we asked them who is responsible for this pregnancy, said, hey, I don't even know. It's one brother. You understand? So unplanned pregnancies, definitely no father to cater for that child. So not only in teenagers, also in adults too, that are pregnant out of wedlock. So some even prefer having that. I mean, tell you, while under Okunikoko, I can't be under any man controlling me. So this has been one of the factors that has brought about rise in single parenting. Also migration and urbanization, where they will go for look for greener pastures, not only in overseas, also within Nigerian community. And this has also caused about separation in marriages. Economic factors also have been an integral factors that has led to this rise or increase in single parenting. Now let's look at the impact of this single parenting on child development. In fact, it has been a worrying issue as a secondary school teacher, where we see these children. One of the, let me quickly tell you list some of the impacts of single parenting on child development. We have the emotional well-being of this child. We have the academic performance. We have socialization. We also have gender development, among others. Emotional well-being, it has been an issue on these children because most of them are emotionally imbalanced. They don't listen in class. They don't. They just feel they are not balanced emotionally. And when we try to talk to them, most of their causes is that daddy me àti mommy mi wọ́n jà, wọ́n sí lọ́dọ̀ ara wọn mọ́, as in the child and my parents are not together again. They fight always, and I'm with only my daddy, and it's really disturbing me. You know, that kind of it. Emotionally, these children are not balanced. We also have issue on academic performance. We have some children that have been performing excellently well before, and due to this separation of their parents, you see that they end up not performing well in their academics, and we have to do so many things to bring them back, and it has been a lot of issues. And also socialization. You could just see a student. There is this case they brought this week, where this child is 13 years old. He's a boy. He decided not to come to school for like a week. What happened? We now called the mother. The mother said the child is with his father, is not with her any longer. You know, this is what it's also some of the negative impacts of single parenting on child development. Also, gender development. You know, there are some cases where you have a male child, and it is the father that we need to talk to his father about changes on his maybe body, maybe he's in puberty stage, and the father is not around. He is only living with the mother. He feels, I'm a little bit grown up. I can't tell my mom I have some things or some changes on my body. So it's also having a negative impact on these children, this single parenting of a thing. And though there are some parents that have a good parent-child relationship, despite the fact that there are some single parents, despite the fact that they are single, they still create that time to with their children or child, so that they can have a well child development, but yet the negative impact is far, far, far more than the positive impact. So I have a lot of case studies that I can keep saying, but in conclusion, I would say that the negative impact of single parenting on child upbringing is more than the positive impact, and suggesting or recommending that some interventions should be made. For example, like in schools, we need more in both primary and secondary, even in university level, but we need more counselors, at least to educate these students on how to cope with single parenting and their upbringing, their development. Also, in education, the parents should be more educated on how to manage this single parenting with their child upbringing or child development, among the likes. This, I would like to stop here. Thank you very much for listening.
Personally, I would say I'm expert because I have lots of single parents, especially single female mothers around me. I think I'll also say that I agree with you that single parents need to be taught about how to go about how to go training their children as single parents. So thank you very much. Next, we'll listen to the next presenter. Yes, I think you're presenting it. Okay, so we'll be listening. Yes. So we'll listen to the presentation of Dr. Amos Taiwo. Dr. Amos Taiwo is, he has a slide. Yes. Yes. Okay, so okay. So Dr. Amos Taiwo is a lecturer at the Department of Urban and Regional Planning, Olabisi Onabanjo University, Agoiwoye, Ogun State, Nigeria. He has authored many publications in local and international books and journals. His research interests evolved around emerging urban social issues and environmental planning. His presentation is co-authored with Olarenwaju Timothy Dada. You have the floor for 15 minutes. Thank you. Do you want to wait so that she would present? Then when she's done, okay. No, your name appears before her, but no problem. You can sit down so that she would present. Okay. All right, since you're ready. Yeah. So while we're waiting for Dr. Taiwo's slides to be ready, Dr. Bukola Amao Taiwo would present the paper she co-authored with Dr. Oyekunle Ilusa, right? All right. Dr. Bukola Amao Taiwo is an academic developer, researcher, and entrepreneurship educator currently working at the University of Lagos Entrepreneurship and Skills Development Center. Within the center, she holds multiple roles, including that of a learning facilitator, curriculum developer, and coach for student entrepreneurs. Research interests span through entrepreneurship education, university-based entrepreneurship ecosystems, student entrepreneurship, and experiential learning strategies. Oyekunle Yunusa is a lecturer in the Department of Adult Education, University of Lagos, Nigeria, with a specialization in entrepreneurship in adult education. His research interests span through entrepreneurship education development, young adult employability, and manpower training and development. He has 7 years of professional work experience at the University of Lagos and has conducted several research projects which have yielded 15 publications in both national and international journals of high repute. He has, alongside with his team, delivered entrepreneurship mindset change programs across universities in Nigeria. He belongs to 6 memberships of professional and academic groups and has received 7 scholarships, awards, and grants. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. My name is, as she has said earlier, standing on the previously established protocol. I'll be presenting a paper on parenting style, gender, and entrepreneurial competencies of teenagers in Alimosho local government. Now, it's a common knowledge that entrepreneurs are known for risk-taking, creativity, proactiveness, and innovativeness. And there has been several arguments on where entrepreneurs acquire their skills. Parenting style of parents serves as an enabler and can also be a barrier to the development of entrepreneurship skills. As a matter of fact, research has proven that entrepreneurs that start earlier are often more successful than people who start much later in their life. But much is yet to be known about how students actually perceive parenting as an influence on their entrepreneurial orientation. Now, literature has established 4 types of parenting. The permissive parenting that entails being driven by a child and rarely allows or enforces rules, and parents having to overindulge child to avoid conflicts. We have the authoritative. We solve problems together with a child. That is to say, he is fully engaged in the life of the child and ensures that the child cooperates despite giving instruction. He's the one, the parent serves as a leader, but as a hand holder, and engages the child in decision making. Authoritative parents set clear rules and expectations, and their communications are always open and always give natural consequences to children. We have a neglectful parent, which is very uninvolved, absent, does not provide nurture, and is very indifferent to social emotional needs and the behavioral needs of the child. And the last one is the authoritarian. I call him the military parent, who is always driven. All decisions are driven by the parent, whether he knows everything about it or not. And then he sets the rules, and when anybody refuses to obey the rules, he metes out punishment. It's a one-way communication for the authoritarian parent. And then it has a lot of negative implications on the child's social, emotional, and behavioral needs. However, the authoritative parenting, which helps the child to solve a problem and sets clear rules and expectations and makes communication open, has been found to be the one that supports children and teenagers' entrepreneurial orientation. We have known that entrepreneurial orientation of teenagers can be supported by the authoritative parenting, but we don't know much about the attitude and behaviors of the parents that make the teenager want to be entrepreneurial. The objectives of this study is an ongoing study. We're yet to complete our field work, but I will report the extent to which we have achieved the goals of this study. We want to examine relationships of how the parenting styles and its construct, impact and affect entrepreneurial competency of the high school students. We investigated the influence of gender on teenage entrepreneurial competency and also explored the interactive effects of the parenting styles and gender on the entrepreneurial competencies of these students. In my field, we always come up with hypotheses, and the hypothesis is that there's no significant relationship between parenting styles and entrepreneurial competency. I'll have to run faster now. That relates to the objectives. So I'll have to run faster so that I can spend time on what's more important. Now, this study is hinged on Holland Riasek's vocational personality model. And what Holland is saying is that for an individual to be entrepreneurial, that person has to display entrepreneurial competence. And that competence comes from preference for enterprising activities. Before someone can be termed as entrepreneurial, he must have been engaged in activities that make him, that are related to entrepreneurship and innovation. And he identified two ways in which entrepreneurs can be developed, or entrepreneurs develop their mindset. The first one is that it can be born with inborn traits from their sex and some other personality traits. However, he also stated that parents who provided opportunities, support, and resources that help children to develop interests and preferences and competencies related to entrepreneurship are able to support teenagers' entrepreneurial competencies. Now, this study was a mixed study. We used interviews and then a survey instrument, a questionnaire, to gather data from 200 teenagers. Our survey instrument was for 200 teenagers, while the key informant interview guide was used to solicit response from 20 teenagers, 10 males and 10 females, because of the gender content of our study. We analyzed our quantitative data using percentages, mean, median, and mode, and standard deviation. The hypotheses were tested with inferential statistics. The quantitative data was coded in teams in accordance with the objectives of the study. Now, the key findings of this study. We found that a significant number of teenagers whose parents have businesses were interested in engaging in entrepreneurship. If you look to the right side, you see that teenagers whose parents had businesses were more interested. We had 80.8% of them were more interested in entrepreneurship compared to teenagers whose parents had no businesses. And during the interview, one of the teenagers had this to say. He said, teenagers need exposure, and not just knowledge, but the experiences of others. And they need encouragement, appreciation, and acknowledgement. He was trying to support what he said about how his parents were supportive of his own entrepreneurial activity. I call it activity, not entrepreneurship itself, because entrepreneurial activity is a predictor of entrepreneurship itself. Now, before I continue, this study was prompted when we had a pitching competition in our center. There was a boy who came in, he was the last. He didn't comb his hair, he wore slippers. And then he said he came in, he doesn't even have a slide. And then he said he came in with an idea of how he could improve on his parents. He said his parents was a tomato seller, that the mother sells tomatoes. So it took me back to the tomato seller in my mom's house. Okay, this boy is a child to a tomato seller, and yet he thinks the parents should do better. Now, I now begin to imagine, what if the parents had better knowledge of what she's doing? It means that the university is going to be working on something better, a better foundation. He didn't win any grant as expected, but I called him and told him that we're expecting another 5 million naira from Off Foundation in the next 1 or 2 months. And I want you to go back. This is how to do a business model. Meet this person, this is how to pitch. And I want you to come back with that same idea, using the background of your parents selling tomatoes. You might not luck now, but with better preparation and having the right skill set, you might be able to access some of the funds we are bringing in. So one of the key findings is that, like I said earlier, that majority of the students also who are interested, some of them wanted to have businesses, but the most important thing that concerned them was that they wanted to be financially independent. That guy whose mother sold tomatoes thinks that, I mean, how much are you selling and how much is my school fees? I think you can do this better. So what can I do to make it better? Now, a significant number of respondents, I found that, I don't know why it's this way, but both the male and the female, they think gender is not a determinant to how successful they will be as entrepreneurs. One of them said most grown-ups feel the business route is mainly for boys because according to them, girls are meant for the kitchen. Boys go out to hustle at all. But I like the last statement, but that's not the way my family thinks. It's also an evidence that parental style can also be and can also help. Thank you very much. So now the parents I also found out that the parents' expectation on grades and coupled with school academic activities can be a major reason. It can be a barrier to why students do not want to go into entrepreneurship. Now, the last guy said, entrepreneurship is not part of my course of study. These parents want a white collar job. And they don't even understand that a student can become an entrepreneur. They tell you, come back to first class and you tell them, oh, I'm having a business. They tell you, Kojuma, why are you going into business while you are a student? So in conclusion, parents can have a significant influence in teenagers' entrepreneurial orientation, especially through the expectation and what they model as parents. My recommendations for this study, like I said, it's an ongoing study. I think the PTA can be a veritable platform for educating parents that there are no jobs. And then if an adult become entrepreneurial, there's nothing bad in starting from the university. Student entrepreneurship is becoming a major research area now. And that's because students are now having viable businesses while they're in school. So the PTA can be a very good platform for educating parents on this. Higher education institution needs to provide structure. Now, we're not the only ones in Nigeria suffering the issue of structure when it comes to entrepreneurship education. In the US too, they don't have a structured entrepreneurship education program ingrained into the school curriculum and the school processes. So we recommend that there should be structure. Student entrepreneurs should have the time, and it should be leveraged. We should leverage on departments to give students time to thrive as entrepreneurs. The timetable is my key word here. And lastly, student entrepreneurs should be given support in terms of funding. Funding is helping them to start up their business and then opening them to market. We all agree that the university is a community and a market on its own. I'd like to hypothesize that if a student entrepreneur can succeed as an entrepreneur inside the university, there are very few things that can serve as barrier when he graduates after school. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Bukola Taiwo. Now I think we are now ready to listen to you.
All right. I want to stand on the.
Do you want to stay here so that the audience can see it very well?
I want to start on the existing protocol. My name is Amos Taiwo from Columbia University. Let me start by saying that all problems are complex and diverse across different countries, particularly in the developing nations of the world. And this is a serious concern to different stakeholders over the years. The multidimensional nature of such problems has presented a situation in which, as one problem is being tackled, many others, both existing and emerging, are yet to be solved. Such problems is the increasing phenomenon of child labor. Child labor is a form of work that is harmful to children on a physical, mental, moral, or other levels, and impairs their ability to complete their education. This includes denying them the opportunity to attend school, forcing them to drop out early, or forcing them to work excessively while attending school. There are estimated over 160 million children between the ages of 5 and 17 who engage in child labor globally. And this figure is steadily rising. That has been established in the literature. And about 63 million of these children are girls, while 97 million are boys all over the world. In Nigeria, child labor is so pervasive that many people consider it to be just a regular part of life. And over 20 million school-age children are not attending school, as most of them are on the street working as child hawkers, scavengers, beggars, shoe shiners, and so on. And this is mostly caused by poverty, as noted by Alabi 2022. The physical environment of Ibadan, as in other cities in Nigeria, has a significant influence on child labor. Child laborers are an environmental nuisance as they generate waste and dispose of it, obstruct traffic flow, and create ugly urban scenes. Certain urban environmental conditions also provide them with convenient locations or abodes for their operation, which attracts them equally. As the children relate with the urban milieu, they are highly exposed to various environmental and physical health problems, which hinder their healthy growth and development. And this include tiredness, wounds, accidents, general body pains, sickness, headaches, and so on. It is hypothesized here that the effect of these issues on working children will differ significantly depending on whether they are male or female children. And this is because the latter are not only more susceptible and prone than the former, but also because the effects and implications are more extensive and far-reaching for the female gender. And this calls for a careful examination. We need to look at the gender lens of the issue. So child labor in Ibadan, as well as other major Nigerian cities, has been the focus of attention by various researchers. For example, SADC 2010 focused on the underlying causes, manifestations, ramifications, and solutions while exploring the trafficking aspect of child labor. And we focused on the he focused on the underage. Again, Adetayo et al. 2001 investigated the hawking dimension of the phenomenon. Despite all of these efforts aimed at addressing child labor in urban centers of Nigeria, the gender side of the issue has not been adequately attended to. In the light of this study examines the gender aspect of child labor in Ibadan, Nigeria. More specifically, the following are the objectives that the study addressed. One, examine the spatial distribution of boy and girl child laborers, examine the children's socioeconomic backgrounds, determine the reasons why children engage in street work, and examine the physical and environmental health issues that result from child labor. Methodology. Ibadan is a pre-colonial urban center with vast spatial extent and well-developed, easily distinguishable residential zones. That is the core, the transition, and the suburban. And each of these residential zones is homogeneous in terms of physical layout, socioeconomic and environmental characteristics. And this framework provided the most available spatial units upon which data were obtained. Having stratified the city into 3 zones. Specific child laborers prone areas were identified in each zone. However, to allow for an objective comparison among zones, areas identified earlier were chosen from each zone, conceptualized here as data delineation identified areas, that is DDAs. No, now there are 5 major locations where child laborers were predominant in Ibadan. Okay, and we try as much as possible to identify those locations, and the important ones, or where they were most predominant, were selected, and the children were selected, and questionnaires were administered to them in each of those locations. Now, the table identified the table presented here is showing the identified and selected land uses across the different residential area of the city. The sources of data. 2 sets of data were obtained. The first one was on incidence of boy and girl child laborers across the different spatial units. And the second data were on reasons why boys and girls engage in child labor, their socioeconomic characteristics, and so on. Then, on the incidence of boy and girl child laborers, data on these were obtained through the method of direct counting, which was done in the morning, afternoon, and evening for a week to determine the children's spatial distribution pattern. Thus, 3,021 boys and 2,005 girls were counted over the course of the 7 days in the 3 residential zones, with 1,502 boys and 905 girls found in the core area of Ibadan, 824 girls and 515 boys in the transition, and 695 girls and 585 boys in the suburban residential area. The second set of data was obtained through questionnaire administration. And for this purpose, a convenience sampling technique was employed to select a total of 278 child laborers across the selected spatial unit, comprising 173 boys and 105 girls. And prior to this, ethical consent was sought from the child laborers or their guardians, particularly those that were caregivers to blind beggars and so on. Then trained research assistants were employed to do the end count and the administration of questionnaire. Then the survey was generally conducted over a distance of 500 meters. Okay, the direction could, however, be divided into a number of directions, depending on the pattern of development or road network of each location. And the data obtained was subjected to cross-tabulation and frequency counts to reflect the gender differentials of the child laborers. The aggregated data, this is the results now. The aggregated data showed that the majority, that is 58.9% of the child laborers identified were boys, while the remaining were girls. And findings across the different land uses showed that 12.7% of the children observed in spaces around church were boys, while the proportion of the girls was 12.6. The same pattern was observable in some other land uses. For example, at junctions, while the boys accounted for 23.6%, the girls represented 22.9%. The situation was also the same in and around motor parks, where 23.8% of the aggregate number of the identified child laborers were boys, while 19.6% were girls. However, reverse was the case for mosques and markets, where the pattern was somewhat distorted. Around mosques, for example, While 13% of the identified child laborers were boys, the girls accounted for 15.4%. In a similar vein, 26.8% of the total number of the identified child laborers were boys, while the girls represented 29.2% in and around markets. The study further established that the majority, that is 62.2% of the children, were between the ages of 6 and 12 years old. The gender proportion of this category established that while the boys were 65.3, the girls represented 57.1. Because of my time, let me go quickly to the recommendations. Child labor has land use implications as exemplified by its distribution pattern among different spatial units. In light of this, it is obligatory for urban planners to immediately implement physical planning policies that will guarantee harmonious development and functional land uses to deter the convergence of boys and girls. Then, this policy should take into account smart design and an efficient land use management system that will prevent the emergence of squatter informal sector operations, which child laborers frequently mixed with in indiscriminate locations. It has been shown in this study that the most obvious and significant reasons responsible for the majority of children working in dangerous and exploitative conditions on the street are poverty and insufficient family income. Thus, eradication of child labor can only be realized if the challenge of poverty and insufficient family income is attended to. With this in mind, it is vital for policymakers to provide practical guidelines for designing and formulating programs to reduce poverty that will directly affect families and other groups of the poor within the society. While children who work in dangerous conditions on the street have certain characteristics in common, there are substantial differences between boy and girl children in Ibadan. The results of this study have shown that in addition to gender differences in the spatial distribution of child labor, there are variations between boys and girls in terms of their exposure to physical and environmental health risks, their level of school attendance, their preferred mode of working, and their desired conditions for leaving the street. This shows that the effects of performing dangerous work on the street are different for male and girl children. Given this, it is strongly recommended that gender disparities be addressed in any intervention initiatives for child laborers. And lastly, to address the issue of child labor, policymakers and other pertinent stakeholder groups must implement gender-sensitive policies. This should take cognizance of the desired conditions that would make boy and girl children stop street activities. The physical and environmental health issues boy and girl children are exposed to as a result of the work they do on the street and the mode of working of boy and girls on the street. In this wise, the plans and strategies will be sensitive to gender fairness as well as rights of the child as promulgated by the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women and Convention on the Rights of the Child. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hostel. Now, the floor is open now for questions. Okay. So, okay, let's start with Dr. Aditya.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you, Amos. It was your presentation that I was able to listen to. I came in late, and I'm so sorry for that. I enjoy listening to your presentation on, child labor, and I have a couple of thoughts regarding what you're working on. I am researching children and welfare, from a literary perspective. And listening to you, I'm instigated to raise a couple of troubling questions, for you. If you cannot answer them, I'm happy we can talk further, hereafter. So I go into what I want to outline. And there are conceptual issues. Number one is, in your project, how are you thinking about the category child? What is a child for you? How are you defining that? Are you defining a child from a biological perspective? Are you defining a child from a chronological age? Or are you defining a child from a cultural lens? Furthermore, is your definition a combination of all three categories? So just in what way are you defining the concept of child? And corollary to that is the question of, even in your analysis, I noticed that you talked about these children doing things. And when I listen carefully, the things they do are things that are associated with adults. And so if that is the case, at what point can we conclude that we're dealing with children? And that's why it's important, I think, to define the sense in which you are deploying the category child. Thank you.
Okay, good evening. My name is Ihoma Okorie. I'll start with the first presenter. I was excited. I don't have questions anyway, just comments generally. I was excited when I saw your topic, sarcasm and facial expressions. But you didn't mention anyone to us. I was expecting to hear it, but nothing was mentioned to us. What are those examples of sarcasm and facial expressions that the Yoruba people used before now to train their children? What has happened? How is it in the present time? And what is the way out? I know you said it's a work in progress, I understand, but I needed you to tell us about parenting in the pre-colonial Yoruba society, number one, how it has been altered in recent times, what is the effects, and what is the way out, what is the way out? So that was what I expected to hear in your presentation, but I didn't hear any of it. To the second presenter, the lady who talked about single parenting and child upbringing. She talked about the causes of single parenting. She talked about the effects of single parenting. But I want to ask, was there a case study, or you were just doing a general thought about what you have seen? Was there a particular case study that you used to bring out the facts that you were bringing out? Was there a population of study? What methodology did you adopt in your study? I want to know about that. Then to the third presenter, I was looking at your recommendations, and if I know, the little I've heard about recommendations is that recommendations are supposed to be in tandem with your objectives, your hypothesis. But I didn't see any real correlation between the two of them. I don't know, maybe you can help me clarify. Thank you.
Sorry. So maybe, okay.
Okay, thank you for your various presentations. And first of all, I want to say that the presentation on single parenting was quite interesting. However, I came a bit late and I didn't hear the part where she mentioned the factors or the causes of single parenting. However, I think because her conclusion tilted towards single parenting as being negative. And I want to say that the factors leading to single parenting is a determinant of how the children will turn out. How do I mean? For a woman who is probably attaining 50, right? Who can't find a husband or who doesn't want to get married and decides to have a child, the way she parents that child might be different from that of a woman whose husband abandoned. That's one. Secondly, I want to also use the instance of widowed single parenting. You cannot classify single parenting style to that of an abandoned spouse. So when we're talking about whether single parenting is good or bad, we need to put all this into consideration because you cannot model them together as, oh, and conclude that single parenting is good or bad. That is my observation. Then for the scholar that presented on parenting style, I looked at her study population and her sample size. I don't know if your population is 200 and you're sampling just about 10%. I don't know if that is okay enough to call it a quantitative study, even though she mentioned that she used, because she said she used a mixed method. If you're interviewing just 10% of the entire population, I think, for me, I think that is small. The sample size is small. Then for the last presenter, because I wasn't around during the first presentation, the last presenter talked about child labor. And my question is tilted towards what Doc asked earlier. How do you define a child? Are you defining a child based on the physical age, right? And if you're defining a child based on the physical age and you're saying that 20 million children, because in your introduction, you mentioned 20 million children. How did you arrive at 20 million children? And when we talk about street hawking, for instance, you cannot totally say that street hawking is child labor. Why do I say this? While I was growing up as a child, when I see my friends going out to hawk, I usually tell my great-grandma then that I want to follow them. So if I am following them because I want to follow them, you can't call that child labor, in my own opinion. So these are some of the issues I took note of. Thank you.
Okay, I just have a comment to make as regards to the second presenter, Professor Ade Damola, and it's also going in the same line with what she said about how she came up with her findings. How was she able to conclude that single parenting, has more negative effects than when people are co-parenting? Because I know that we still have parenting system where the both parents are involved and the children even turn out to be worse than single parenting. So I think it should be, what is the parenting style that you are adopting? Whether single parent, whether both parenting. Because I sometimes I don't like calling it, I don't like saying parenting. I think parents, quote unquote, should be friends to their children because that is the way you would be able to know everything. They would, if you are their best friend, they will tell you everything, especially in the puberty stage. They will tell you when their menses is coming. They will tell you when this is happening and when that is happening. But when you are not, when you push yourself as the man of the house or as the mother who always cautions when they do astray, and you don't call them together, just like sex education, you don't bring them close to you to make them to understand that aside being your mother or aside being your dad, I am also your friend. You can always tell me anything, you know. And when such issue arises, you find them discussing it with an outsider. You find them among their peers. And when the wrong advice comes in, these children are misled. So I think it should be more of the style. Parents are sorry, I'm not a parent. Style parents are just other than single parenting. I'm not saying that single parenting is not needed in anyhow, but I'm saying that we should try to just approach between the both of them, co-parenting, single parenting. What is the methodology or how did she arrive to tell us that single parenting is more needed than co-parenting? Thank you.
Yeah. No, when they are done, we'll take the questions for. Did you say that question?
No, the other questions on
Okay.
So where do you start the answers from?
Yes, can start with
All right.
we had the first question.
The definition of a child that I gave is actually based on the age, And we identify those children to be those below the age of 18. All right. So that is what we actually did. Then I did mention that we carry out a head count of each of those children that we observe in each of the different locations where they were concentrated. Now, the children that we counted were those that were involved in one activity or the other. Some of them were hawking, and it's obvious. If you are traveling, you will see most of them at the bad spot of the road where they are hawking goods. Some of them are begging, and so on and so forth. So they were doing one thing or the other. All right. So those are the things that we actually did in the course of the survey.
If I may add, just to help you further, I think there is something in what you're doing that is challenging your definition. And this is if you are looking to define a child from a chronological age perspective, how about the undertakings of those children? In which case, the things they do, some of them are sex, some of them are the breadwinners of the home. And these are responsibilities adults who live. So if we now find those who are defined as true, there's to me, how then can we still conveniently say that they are children? So it is in that sense that I am claiming that the basic nucleus of your research is challenging definition. And in my own work, I have put apart two small things about challenge. How we take your child. There's no universal challenge. Society, one defines
It is.
So it's something to think about. I think you're doing a great project. This kind of attention to the concept before I reach what you are doing. I mean, I'm happy to talk to any other time.
Thank you so much for that question. You said I should talk about the sarcasm and the facial expression itself that I emphasized in my research. Yes, I tried to do that by making reference to the fact that sarcasm is the verbal aspect of expressive parenting, while facial expression is the nonverbal aspect of parenting. So I emphasized on the fact that facial expression has to do with signs and symbols that children of today do not understand. And I also make emphasis on the fact that the way sarcasm are being used are also used in a metamorphosized manner, that a child received an insult without being offended. And I'll give you an instance. When they tell a child, the child goes without knowing that he's going for a punishment. So it is a romantic way of subjecting a child to a punishment, which is a sarcastic manner of subjecting that child to a romantic understanding of what the society should be. And that is why I emphasized in my presentation that it is a way of debunking the notion of conventional style of parenting, which I emphasized, and my partner here also emphasized those 4 factors of Vienna psychological scope of parenting, which centered on authoritarian, authoritative, permissive, and neglect. So when I refer to the sarcasm, I am referring to the verbal expression that subjects a child to punishment, corporal punishment, in a very romanticized manner, while the expression is also a way of massaging children in a way that they have to conform to the sociocultural practices of that environment. I think I've, okay. Okay, I'm sorry.
Maybe you just wait. Please, can all right. Okay, you want to address someone?
Yes. You made mention of that I mentioned 20 million children.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah, it's not
20 million.
Yes, there are children that are out of school. That has been established in Nigeria. It's not my work. It's established in the literature now.
All right, and can our online participants please respond to the question directed to her?
I think it's a comment to her. Okay, she's coming.
Can you please unmute yourself? You are muted. You are muted. Please unmute yourself.
Sorry. I said they asked that what methodology did I use for the work? Yes, I used a qualitative method, and I used an interview to gather my information. And I would like to tell you that there are a lot of things that prompted this research. Oh my God. Research work, there should be a problem or a gap you are trying to fill. And I have been among the children. I've taught them in primary level, and I've also taught them in secondary level. I taught in the north during my NYSC, and when I went to the east, when I went to Imo State to visit my sister there, I spent like 6 months, and I taught in their public primary school as a PTA teacher, and I really gathered some experiences. Now, coming back to Lagos, I also gathered some experience, which prompted me to this research work. That not only that, there are experiences around me that when I saw some cases, it's really brought about a sadness to me somehow. And this prompted the research work. Now, you said someone mentioned that it's not only a negative impact. Yes, I said it while presenting that there are also some single parents that have some some quality, some good impacts on or positive impacts on their children. But from the findings, even not mine, I even did some empirical review. And from this empirical review, it has been deduced that the negative impact is more than the positive impact. So now, from this work, now, I mentioned it that there are some parents, single parents, that also have positive impact on the children. So from the research and from the interview made to the students and to their parents, we find out that most of these single parents are female, are mothers, and they tend to even call them, your child has an issue in the school, you need to come. They will tell you, mo wà lọ́nà my 12 báyìí o, mo ń tajà lọ́wọ́ o, mo wà lọ́nà my 12 o, ẹ wo, I'm injure me, that I'm busy now in the market. I need to make money. She is not the only one I gave birth to. So it's more of a negative impact than a positive. I didn't say there is no positive. We have seen some of these children that their parents, they have only a single parent. I've seen many that even it is their father. But with that, these students are doing well, even in their exam, in their academic and even emotionally, they are balanced, even socially. But yes, this is common in single parents. And you need to see these students crying. Some are even abused by maybe the so-called husband-to-be of their mother. I've seen a case where that so-called husband-to-be impregnated the child. This child is not even an adult. She's just a girl of 13 years. It's just that she started her messes early, around 10 years old. So and even some joined bad gangs. It's a male child, a student. He had to repeat the class because he's not performing well academically. And the next thing he said, and the mother came, we invited the mother, we asked what is happening. The mother said, I'm the only one taking care of them, and I don't, how will I can't kill myself because of him. He's not the only one I gave birth to. It's not that single parents have not bring their children excellently, but it is more of negative impact than the positive. The findings and from the empirical review I've done. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So thank you very much. The first question I have said, the recommendation does not align with the objectives of the study. So if you look closely at the three objectives of my study, the third one is the one that is being addressed by the interviewer. This is a mixed study. And if you remember what I said it's a work in progress. As of today, we have only 78 responses. 78 responses to the survey. But the qualitative aspect, which is the interview, provided more data. And that is why I emphasize on giving responses giving data based on the things I have identified. So in my field, where we do quantitative studies, I'm now mixing it up for based on the question of population. The interviews are used to validate the responses I get from my quantitative study. The quantitative studies are yet to be concluded. And it's impossible to do 200 interviews to validate a quantitative study that had 200 questionnaires. So the 20 were interviews. They're interviews. I said that the 200, it was not the population, it was a sample size, not the population. Getting a population of teenagers in Alimosho local government in the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Lagos. You have been to the field before, you know the happiness. So we use the post sample. And then I don't know if I've answered your question. Based on the objectives of this study, the responses we have here are focused on the third objective, which is qualitative. That's where you have. Thank you very much. Okay, yeah.
So, should I read the code? Yeah, we started late, so 5 minutes now. 5 minutes now. She said, please, what will illustrate are the current issues as regards child domestic servitude, a form of child labor, from your findings as regards child labor?
This category of children outside the scope of what I actually teach. I actually look at child laborers on the street. And these children are this category of children she's asking the question on are hidden from the society. So I think for that aspect, I'm going to focus on children on the street.
Thank you. Any comments, solution?
Comment.
Okay. Yeah, I want to say something and follow up what is described as something what I can't really see. Perhaps you need to more specifically with your definition of single parenting, because if you talk about single parenting, and for instance, where a woman is parenting her kids, her extended family, that fall under the category of single parenting. Or, for instance, where a woman is probably separated from her original husband or married to another man, because she cited an example now about where the mom's young, or anything is having an affair with daughter. In that scenario, you consider that person a single parent, considering that there's a partner who is supposed to fill in the gap of whatever was wrong.
Just put one of those in your relation of concept and it's a beautiful song. That's a nice thing. Well done.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for participating in this panel. The second and third part of the panel will hold on Saturday, so you're welcome to attend. Thank you. Thank you very much.